Hello my crochet friends, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm super excited to show you how to make this really cool and unique crochet cardigan. The best part about this project is that you can swap out the back panel so you can wear it in different ways, like having multiple cardigans in one. I made mine with a back panel, but you can also do it on the sleeves, the front, whatever you want. The first thing you need to do is measure around your chest, and once you have the measurement, we're going to make a foundation chain that matches that length. I'm using two colors for my cardigan, but you can absolutely stick with just one color if you prefer. Before we dive into deep, I just want to mention that this tutorial is kind of divided into three parts. In the first part, I will show you how to crochet a basic cardigan, which will be the foundation of the project. Then in the second part, you will need to follow along with another one of my tutorials to learn how to make these tapestries. And finally, in the last part of the video, I will show you how to attach the panels to the cardigan so you can swap them out whenever you want. So you can learn everything from scratch, or if you already have a cardigan at home that you'd like to use, feel free to skip ahead to the end of this video to learn how to attach the panels only. Now we're going to make a double crochet into the third chain from the hook. After that, just keep making double crochets all the way along the foundation chain until you reach the end. Once you reach the end of the row, chain 3 and turn your work. Now we're going to continue making double crochets, but this time we'll be doing it a bit differently. We're going to work in a rib stitch pattern. To do this, you will alternate between working a double crochet in the back of the stitch and then in front of the next stitch. As you can see here, I'm going to insert my hook into the back of the stitch first, and then I will make my double crochet as usual. Now I'll be doing the same thing but in front of the next stitch. So the last one I inserted from here, and now I'm going to insert from here. This technique creates that rib texture we're going for. Just remember to alternate between the front and the back as you work your way along the row. This rib stitch pattern is going to be used several times throughout this project, so make sure to remember it. Once you finish the row, chain 3 and repeat exactly the same process. This time pay close attention to how the stitches line up. If the stitch below is in the front, the stitch you're making on top should also be in the front. If the stitch below is in the back, your stitch on top should also be in the back. Just a quick reminder that the size of your ribbing will depend on the thickness of your yarn. If your ribbing isn't quite the size you want yet, feel free to add more rows until it's perfect for you. This also applies to the rest of the cardigan, so feel free to add more rows anywhere if you feel the need. Even if you're using the same yarn as me, you can customize your cardigan to be shorter or longer than mine. Once you have the ribbing done, it's time to change colors. If your cardigan is all one color, you just need to chain 3 to start the next step, but if you're changing colors like I am, you will join the new yarn here and chain 3 as well. Now we're going to make double crochets until you're ready to add a pocket. Feel free to do as many rows as you like, but just keep in mind that the pocket should be positioned below the line where we'll be starting the sleeves. I'll walk you through adding the pocket step by step later. In my case, I did 4 rows before adding my pocket, but if I were to do it again, I'd probably leave 5 or 6 rows to make my pocket a little bigger. Now that I have all the rows I need before adding my pockets, the first step is to find the sides of our cardigan to ensure it's symmetrical. To do this, we're going to fold the cardigan in half like I'm doing here, and once it's folded, mark the center of the fold. And then bring the edges to meet at that point. Now that it's folded, count how many stitches you have on one side and place a stitch marker at the end. Then count the same number of stitches on the other side and place another stitch marker at the end. Both sides should have the same number of stitches. This will help us with the pockets and the sleeves. In the next row, we're going to continue making double crochets until we reach the point where we want our pocket to start. I want my pocket to start here, so I'm going to count how many stitches I want the opening of the pocket to have. Then I will make a chain with that same number of stitches plus 1 extra. So for example, my pocket opening will take up 9 stitches, so I'm making a chain of 10. Next, we're going to make a double crochet in the stitch right after the pocket. Continue making double crochets until you reach the stitch marker. As you do this, count how many stitches there are from the stitch marker to the pocket. Then continue making double crochets until you reach the stitch marker on the other side of the cardigan. This time there's no need to count how many stitches you're making. Now that I've reached the stitch marker on the other side of the cardigan, you're going to make the same number of double crochets that you counted from the stitch marker to the beginning of the pocket. This will keep the pocket symmetrical. We're going to leave the same opening for this pocket as we did for the other one. In my case that was 9 stitches, so I'm going to skip 9 stitches here while making a chain of 10. Continue making double crochets until you reach the end of the row. After you finish, count how many stitches you made to ensure everything is symmetrical. Now we're going to continue making rows of double crochets. Don't forget to make a double crochet in each stitch of the chain as well. This time we will keep going until you're ready for the sleeves of your cardigan to start. Again, the number of rows you make will depend on how long you want your cardigan to be. Once you're ready to start adding the sleeves, move your stitch markers to the last row you made. To do this, just count how many stitches you have in the row where the markers were and place them at the same distance in the last row. Now grab a t-shirt or top that fits you well in the sleeves and measure the length of the seam on the front. This measurement will help us determine how wide to make the sleeves on our cardigan. Next, we're going to make rows of double crochets from the edge of the cardigan to the stitch marker only, until you reach the length you measure for your sleeve. It should look like this. It was pretty quick, but I'm going to show you how to do the other side as well in case you haven't understood it yet. Again, you're going to make double crochets from the stitch marker to the edge of the cardigan. This means that for now the back doesn't have any stitches yet except for the ones we made at the beginning. Now that we have the front of our cardigan done, we're going to start on the back. It's exactly the same process, but just keep in mind that you shouldn't attach it to the front piece because that's where your arms will go when we add the sleeves. Begin the back section right after the edge of the front panels. It should look like this. Now we're going to join the shoulders together. I'm going to insert my hook at the edge and make slip stitches to join the front and back panels together. My cardigan still looks the same on both the right and wrong sides, but if you have a preference for which side you want on the outside, just remember to join the shoulders on the wrong side. I'm not going to make slip stitches all the way to the end. I will leave a few stitches unjoined. This will help us create the color of the cardigan, and I'm going to show you the number of stitches in centimeters I left if you want a color like mine. If you've done everything correctly, you should now see where we're going to place the sleeves. I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch underneath the arm and start making double crochets all around to create our sleeve. It can be a bit tricky to add them in, but I will try to fit in as many as possible so that the sleeve doesn't have too many gaps. Just remember, you will need to make exactly the same number of stitches on the other sleeve to keep it symmetrical. At the end of the first row, join with a slip stitch and then start the second row by making your first double crochet in the first stitch. Once you've completed 2 rows, I recommend trying on the cardigan to make sure the sleeve isn't too tight. My sleeve is almost done now, and I'm just showing you up close where I insert my hook at the end and beginning of the rows in case you have any questions. Make sure to try on your cardigan while working on the sleeve so you know when to stop. Once you reach your desired length, count how many rows you did and repeat the same on the other side. As you can see, the sleeves get smaller towards the end. After finishing both sleeves, this is how much white yarn I have left. I started with 4 skeins and the last one was barely used, but it was still necessary. Now we're going to start on the cuffs. You can measure your wrist and make a chain that matches that size. If you think it will be too tight to fit over your hand, feel free to make it a bit larger. I like my cuffs to be snug, so I keep it at my wrist size since the yarn has a little stretch. Before moving on to the second row, I made 2 extra chains and then did my first double crochet in the third chain from the hook. Now we're going to repeat exactly what we did for the ribbing on the cardigan using that rib stitch. So make double crochets all the way to the end of the foundation chain, and then we'll do those alternating stitches on the second row. I'm going to show you in just a few seconds. I want the bottom part to be on the outside because it has more stretch, so I'm going to turn my sleeve inside out, insert the cuff facing down into it, and then sew it together. Now we're going to start adding the finishing touch around the cardigan. I'm going to begin on the side where I want to sew the buttons. We're going to make double crochets all the way up the side until we reach that point. In this part of the video it might get a bit confusing, so I'll leave an illustration on the screen to help you understand a little bit better. To make a nice corner, we'll make one more double crochet in the same stitch where we made the last one. And then chain one. And make 2 more double crochets in the same stitch. Now continue making double crochets until you need to create another corner on the other side of the color. Once again, 2 double crochets in the same stitch, chain 1 and 2 double crochets in the same stitch. Before I continue on this side, let's decide where to place the buttons. You can add as many as you like. I chose 5 and tried to space them evenly. Use stitch markers to mark where you want your buttons to go. I used red yarn because I didn't have enough stitch markers. Now we'll continue making double crochets, but this time, each time you reach a stitch marker, it indicates where a button will go. So we'll chain 1 and skip that stitch, leaving a space for the button to fit. Now let's go back to the other side of the cardigan. We'll make double crochets until we reach the second corner of the color. It will be much easier to understand by looking at my illustration. This time, when I reach the top at the first corner, I'll just chain 2 and continue my double crochets. When you reach the second corner, you'll go back to the first one and repeat this as many times as you want until your color reaches your desired size. Mine looks good here, but I found the bag to be a bit small, so I decided to add 1 more row. Once you have the perfect color, we're going to sew the buttons. At this point, to complete the base of our cardigan, we only need to make the pockets. For that, you just need to create a square or rectangle in whatever size you want, as long as it's larger than the opening of the pocket. To do this, count how many stitches the opening has, including 1 stitch before and 1 stitch after, and then make a square or rectangle with more stitches than that. Once again, I'm just using double crochet. Once you have a panel like this for each pocket, turn your cardigan inside out and sew them over the pocket openings to cover them. Make sure to place your needle in the middle of the stitch and not behind it, because when you turn the cardigan right side out, the stitches should not be visible. In the end, your pockets will look like this, and as you can see, the seam is barely visible on the inside. Since I want my pockets to be closed so nothing falls out, considering they are quite small, I'm going to make another chain the size of the pocket, including one stitch before and one stitch after, and then I'll do the rib stitch again to match the cuffs and the bottom. If you don't remember how to do the rib stitch, start with double crochets on the first row, and then in the following rows alternate between front double crochets and back double crochets. Once I reach the size I want, I'm going to turn my cardigan like this. And now I'm gonna sew it with slip stitches, just like we did when we sewed the shoulders. I will also be adding one button to each pocket to keep them closed. The cardigan itself is done. Now comes the fun part, the removable panels. For that, you can make as many tapestries as you want. I already have a tutorial here on my channel in case you're not sure how to do it. This method I use is super easy even if you don't know how to change colors in crochet. I just recommend making all of them the same size unless you're placing them in different spots. For example, if you're making one for the back and one for the arm, they don't have to be the same size. But if you're making two for the back, I recommend they be the same. Now we're going to make slip stitches all around our tapestries, leaving space for a button on each corner and in the middle if they're kind of big like mine. To create space for the buttons, I'll chain 3 and skip a stitch, as you'll see. But this obviously depends on the size of your yarn and buttons, so make sure to chain enough to fit your button. Now we're going to place our tapestry where we want it on the cardigan, and after that we'll put a stitch marker on the cardigan on each space we made for the buttons. Now replace each stitch marker with the button. And now you can use your tapestry and remove it whenever you want. I love this! To add a final touch, I decided to create 2 bows for each side of the sleeves. For that, chain 3, and once you have 3 loops on your hook, remove the last 2 and create 1 loop with each. This is kind of hard to explain, but it's always the same thing, so I think it's easier to understand by watching. At least I hope so. You just need to repeat these steps until it's big enough for the bow you want to create. That was the tutorial for this week. I'm kind of new to making tutorials, so please comment down below anything I should improve. You can leave your comments and questions, and I always try to reply to all the comments. But if I didn't see yours, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. Hope to see you in next week's tutorial. Bye!